Hello and welcome to the FutureNet World podcast. I'm Giles Cummings, founder and CEO of FutureNet World, and today we are discussing the increasingly topical subject of Cloud Metro. I really want to understand better how Cloud Metro solutions can help drive business growth, but perhaps more interestingly, how Cloud Metro can deliver growth in a more sustainable way. So in a nutshell, what we're talking about today is Cloud Metro in the context of people, profit, and the planet. And to help me with this, I'm delighted to welcome to the podcast today Tim Pennell, who is Director of Product Management at Juniper Networks. Welcome to the podcast, Tim.
Hi, Giles. Happy to be here.
Great. So, Tim, I know this subject is very close to your heart, but for the benefit of our listeners, when you talk about Metro, what exactly are you referring to? And why do you think that Metro is the next hub of innovation for telcos?
Okay, Metro, gosh, it's potentially such a large topic to talk about. We're talking about a part of the network, a layer of the network that's really absolutely critical for keeping us all connected, particularly over the last couple of years, connecting everyone and everything. And if I think about it, it's probably a part of the network that's been perhaps taken a little bit for granted, maybe a little bit ignored over recent years. And we generally refer to this part of the network as the access and aggregation network. Access and aggregation, if you think about that, it conjures up images of, pretty dumb north-south in terms of flow of traffic from access through edge into core connectivity. Just connecting users that want access to services and applications to where the action is, to where those services are delivered. So yeah, essentially access aggregation, dumb pipes.
Okay. And I suppose for further clarity, what do you mean by Cloud Metro? And how is that different than the traditional Metro?
So, okay, if we think about what we've done in the past, and again, if we come back to, particularly if we talk about the routing segment, like I said, we kind of have broken our routing industry in the service provider space up into that access and aggregation piece, the metro space, if you like, through the edge services routers and to core routers. Generally, that's the way we segment our industry. And if we think about what's changing in the metro, really we're going into a place where the action is no longer just in a place where you go through the metro network to get to it. The action and the services delivery, if you like the cloud connectivity, the peering connectivity, you name it, the action is actually now in the metro itself. And that's really creating a big change for us from a metro perspective. So if you like, the metro for us is becoming like the new edge. So you're seeing a lot of distribution of services which were typically further up the stack. Like I said, you went through those dumb pipes of the metro or access aggregation to get to those services in the past, whether they were more centralized peering services or broadband network gateway services or mobile core services, you name it, you kind of just pass through. And like I said, now you're getting a much more distributed architecture with, telco cloud, Amazon, Google, Azure cloud, you name it, colos with peering points, everything getting pushed down into the metro. It's giving us a very different type of network, a very different type of architecture. It's driving, quite frankly, and it needs to drive, quite frankly, a different way of operating the metro from what we've done in the past. So that's what we like to talk when we talk about Cloud Metro. It's about trying to articulate, okay, what are those changes? What does it mean for us? And how do we implement that in terms of an architecture, in terms of products, and in terms of a solution that our service provider customers can use? And what does that mean for both their experience operating that network, as well as the experience of the end users using that network? Definitely, we at Juniper, we talk a lot about the future of networking being about experience. And yes, I personally feel it sounds a little bit like a marketing tagline, but certainly within Juniper, we don't treat it that way. Every investment that we make, we try to look at through that investment, so through that lens of experience. And here we don't just talk about end user experience, we talk also about the experience of the people operating and running the network, keeping it up, keeping it healthy for those end users. And if we talk about experience, what are we talking about in terms of the services? You know, essentially the services that the end users are becoming more demanding, whether it be things like lower latency or quicker response time for applications that are latency sensitive, higher quality rich media, gaming with instantaneous response, newer applications like AR or augmented reality, virtual reality, the metaverse, right, is coming our way. So, you know, whether you're an office worker or a worker of any kind, an assured and secure experience anywhere you want to connect from, whether it's at home or on the road like I am often, from the office, it doesn't matter. Again, assured and secure experience. So that idea of a metro just being a place that essentially traffic passes through to get to the bigger and better things, to the services, that is now the metro itself. That the metro is the place where that comes together, where connectivity and edge cloud come together, hence the term cloud metro. I hope that made sense.
Got it. Yeah, no, it does. It does. Perfect sense. Okay, so I mentioned in my introduction, one of the major benefits of Cloud Metro is delivering growth in a sustainable way. And sustainability is fast becoming a core priority for telcos today. So I'd like to get really your thoughts and Juniper's thoughts on how sustainability is thought about in the context of Cloud Metro.
I think, as you alluded to in your introduction, right? So we actually in Juniper think about sustainability really in three areas. So sustainability in terms of profitable growth for the service providers, for the network operators. Clearly, if you're not making money, you don't stay in business for too long. The second part of the sustainability is sustaining their skilled staff. You know, shortages of skilled staff, either from a hiring perspective or even retaining the staff that we have. And this is not just true for the service providers, but for ourselves as well, right? As vendors in this space, sustaining our skilled staff is becoming our #1 challenge. You know, from a network operator perspective, you know, talking about the staff and managing networks, the networks that we're building are becoming operationally very complex, and this is quite frankly the #1 challenge for many of our service provider customers. You know, they you know, talking to those customers, I think it was a recent Ernst & Young analysis that was done, and really the complexity of running networks was, you know, definitely a challenge and a #1 problem. More important than cost control and things like this. So service experience and the complexity of delivering that is super important. So yes, sustainability of staff, sustainability of operations with those skilled staff, very important. And then the last part of sustainability that we talk about is the planet. So, you know, increasingly, and hey, we live in a world, especially in recent months, right, where the cost of energy is going through the roof, where we have concerns about climate change, carbon emissions, impact on the climate change, and this is not just something that, you know, various governments, companies, including ourselves, have made commitments to, but also even in the standards bodies. You know, you're starting to see requirements come through talking about, okay, sustainability and carbon emissions from the products, from the solutions that we design. And so we have to be very energy and space efficient, reduce our e-waste, all of these good things. So green energy commitments and compliance is becoming increasingly important for us over time. So these are the three main areas that we focus on from a sustainable cloud metro solution perspective.
Okay, and how do your Cloud Metro solutions get such massive sustainability benefits? And second sort of question to that is, you know, what are you doing differently compared to others in this market?
Okay, so first of all, you know, I want to point out that, you know, our terming of Cloud Metro is not something that's we consider to be Juniper specific. We believe that this is an industry shift that's happening in the metro space, that ultimately what we all have to move to and what we all are in fact moving towards are cloud metro solutions that really pull together a number of aspects that differentiate a cloud metro from what we are, again, sounds a bit of a marketing tagline, from, if you like, the metro retro or the dumb pipes that we've delivered in the past in the access aggregation space, differentiates those two types of solutions to deliver this sustainable business growth, whether that's for profitability or for people or for planet. And so when we try to draw those parallels, okay, what did we do in the past? What are we doing differently? What is this solution that Juniper is advocating? And that we see a lot of our competitors as well bringing certain elements to this as well. And this is why we want to have the industry talking about cloud metro, what it means, what we have to drive collectively together. And really, there's three parts to that. If you think about it, there's the architecture itself. How do we build these networks? There's the systems that go into building those networks, and then there's the operations aspects, and all three are very important. I think it's fair to say that if we look at the way we've been building metro networks, access aggregation networks over the more recent years, we've definitely seen a trend to move away from the traditional scale-up architectures of the past. By scale-up, we talk about essentially, putting in chassis, adding in line cards, and then, when that's exhausted, you put in a bigger chassis or a next generation chassis. That type of a scale-up approach to more of what we call a scale-out approach, which is really a case of the metro and aggregation layer learning from a practice that's been fairly common in data centers for a number of years of scale out. So you have a leaf spine architecture, and yes, you may still use both fixed and modular platforms within that, but instead of just having two hub sites with ring aggregation, for example, now you scale out your spine layer to maybe 4 or 8 or whatever you may need, and you scale out your different leafs that connect into that depending on the type of service connectivity, whether it's data center or business services or residential services, mobile services, whatever it may be, your different leafs that then go into that. So this scale out type of architectures, it gives a very smooth and efficient way of scaling architectures. And definitely this is one architectural shift. The other thing which is very important if you want to optimize your costs and your power and everything else is that you cannot do overbuilds anymore. You cannot have a mobile network and then a separate business network, a separate residential or consumer network. You need a common network that delivers everything. So you prevent the overbuilds, you optimize down to a single network. Within that, of course, you can still keep segregation. There's a lot of talk about things like network slicing, whether you base that on segment routing or other technologies, but that ability to slice networks so that you've got a common infrastructure, but you're sharing it for multiple use cases. Beyond that, of course, we talked before, hey, it's about customer experience, end user experience, particularly important. And so we're talking now about a multi-service network, multi-use network, a lot of new services types coming along. And so we have to move away from the sort of more passive, layer 2, layer 3 centric OEM capabilities that we had in access aggregation or carrier Ethernet networks of the past, more towards embedded active assurance that goes all the way up through the services stack. So if you want to monitor specifically some mobile traffic or specifically some connectivity from a business user to a particular cloud, you're actually monitoring at the application layer, whether that's all the way up to layer 7 in the stack. You're monitoring the actual end user experience and doing it in an active way, i.e. with real traffic that you send, and rather than just in a passive way. So embedded active assurance at all points in the network is something that we believe is very important to deliver an assured service for those actual services the customer is using. And then, again, part of that experience, that the uptime of the network, we all live in a world where we're seeing increasing, cybersecurity attacks. And so rather than a bolt-on security approach that we've had in the past with, bolting on firewalls, etc., building that security capability into the network at every point, all the way from the trust anchors that we have built into hardware, all the way up through the operating stack, and then through the different layers of the applications that we build on top, so that you really have a network that you can trust, and that you're monitoring continuously for security breaches, and to ensure that, yes, all is well, all is healthy, the experience for the end user is good. So that's the architectural piece, if you like. What does that mean then for the systems that we need to build that architecture? So it means, so as we push more capability and the metro becomes the edge, it means we're moving away from systems which were really just about traffic aggregation towards systems that need to be a little smarter. They've got rich features, scale, as well as aggregation on top of that. So the capabilities that we're bringing into those systems are more than we had in the past. And unfortunately, the silicon in the industry is evolving to allow that. Equally, though, we have to move away from some of the power-hungry approaches that we had in the past. It has driven a shift from traditional edge silicon in this space, or what we would call run-to-completion type of silicon, towards more pipeline silicon. And you'll see this again, it's not just from Juniper, it's across multiple vendors, towards more pipeline silicon that is more optimized in terms of throughput and power per bit and capacity. It's not perhaps as scalable, but given that we're distributing services into the metro, we don't need the scale of traditional edge services routers of the past. And so this, if you like, good enough scale, but with improved performance, much better throughput, much better power per bit, drives our sustainability and our solutions moving forwards. And finally, just when we look at the systems that we build, part of the challenge for service providers is, with such huge growth that we've been seeing in networks, it does drive very much a sort of rip and replace every 3 to 5 years. So how do you extend the life of platforms so that we're not churning the network as often? And really, that's, if you look at the silicon, and we all get to benefit from Moore's law and the benefits that brings. But when you look at that, it's putting in place systems that are not just good for today, but even with significant traffic growth year over year, they can actually exist in the network for 7 to 12 years. And that requires a lot of thought and care when we go into the system design. It's something that we in Juniper have spent a lot of time on. Certainly some of the product architectures and systems architectures that we've used, they're a little bit more centralized in approach compared to the sort of distributed line cards we've had in the past to optimize power. And with that type of approach, we are seeing up to 2 to 3 times improvement in TCO from a space and power perspective, and even from a cost perspective. So yes, there are some things we can do, but also just taking care at every step. It's the little things sometimes that all add up to make a very big difference. Another area, things like power supply efficiencies. We are the first vendor to introduce platforms which are not just for AC and high voltage, but also for telco DC, 80 plus platinum efficient and a 96% efficiency. So these are all of the little changes that you make to try and deliver systems that are sustainable in terms of duration, that have the intelligence and the capabilities to build the architectures that we want, and also can live in the network for a longer period of time, so that we're not churning the network so often. And finally, the operations piece, right? I mean, we've talked about the experience for the end users and the architectures we build on that. But we talk about then how we get away from the manual or DIY operations of the past that most people are using today, towards more cloud delivered automation. Really trying to take away the time consumed by skilled operators today on routine tasks, upgrading software. Like I said, racking, stacking boxes, of course, still needs to be done. But a lot of the routine tasks, troubleshooting problems, upgrading software, these type of things, we can automate these, and we should automate these, and we should automate them from a cloud delivered platform so that everything is plug and play. These type of things, it takes away time that is spent on that today and gives time back to the operators of the network, so they can really spend the time then thinking about what are the strategic imperatives for delivering new services, for preventing their existing customers from being disrupted, even doing some disruption themselves. That expertise, that AI-enabled collective intelligence that we can build into the automation, that gives time back to the people. It actually helps their job become a little bit less routine, a little bit more enjoyable, and that helps with staff retention. So I think it's all of these things together that make up a cloud metro solution and what we believe goes into making a good cloud metro solution. But it's not just Juniper, it's an industry shift that we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, this is really fascinating, and it's been an absolute education for me, Tim. I think we're going to hear more and more about Cloud Metro in the coming months and years. Tim Pennell of Juniper Networks, thank you for sharing your insight on today's podcast.
Thank you, Giles. Thanks for having me.